In the meantime, we want to bring into the conversation now. We're going to vote about the next 20 minutes or so to this story. Our friends, national security analyst Hal Kempfer, and global shipping analyst and expert Sal Mercogliano, and they join me. Gentlemen, thanks for being with us here on this Friday night. Hal, my first question to you, did the Houthis get the message? Do you think they will be cowed by this? I asked you that last night. What's been the fallout? We know so much more than we did last night.
Andrew, part of it was to send a message, but another part of this was actually to degrade their capabilities. If you look at the sheer number of strikes, you got 100 different major weapon systems, if you will, bombs by various different means that hit at least 30 major target areas, 60 different targets, 16 broader locations. This was a tremendous amount of ordnance, and it was about to degrade their ability to respond. Now, the Houthis rhetorically said, "Oh, we will strike back." This was before anything had taken place. They said that, and of course, they said it again today. And their striking back was one missile that did not hit the target, and actually, it was being aimed at a ship carrying Russian oil. And there's a whole discussion there. Obviously, not what they intended. So when you look at that message, the message would have been, we've degraded your capabilities and we will continue to degrade them until you stop firing missiles and drones.
I want to put up this tweet here as well. This is from Lucas Tomlinson, too. And he says this is just some more information about the nature of the strikes themselves. Over 15 F/A-18 Super Hornet strike fighters from the aircraft carrier USS Dwight D. Eisenhower were launched to strike Iranian-backed Houthi forces in Yemen tonight. All made it back to the boat safely, according to a U.S. official telling that to Fox. My next question, Sal, for you is, I want to read from the statement put out by U.S. CENTCOM late last night, and especially this part struck out to me. It probably struck out to you as well, saying these strikes have no association with and are separate from Operation Prosperity Guardian. What'd you make of that? Are they really that separate?
Well, Vice Admiral Cooper, in his off-camera on the record speech he gave, made clear prior to this he wanted to differentiate defensive operations being done in the Red Sea. Protect international shipping was going to be separate because he's very concerned that what happens is you have a strike like this, and some of the members in the alliance may start to waver about committing assets. Mm-hmm. The U.S. Navy has got to get additional assets, naval vessels in place so that they can provide this protection. Because while the strike is militarily effective, the question becomes, is it going to be economically effective? Are we going to see a decline in the insurance rate going to bring shipping back in? One of the worrisome things we just saw was an announcement by one of the big tanker associations, hold tankers outside the Red Sea for a couple of days to wait and see how this worked out. So I think they still want to maintain the defense alliance, keep it attached. Again, the fear here always is to get embroiled some way, at least perception-wise, in the Israeli gossip.
Hey, we're just seeing some of the footage put out by U.S. CENTCOM of some of those fighter jets taking off on the deck there of the Eisenhower as well. Hal, what has been the collateral damage so far inside of Yemen? Do we know, how many Houthi terrorists have been killed? What has been destroyed by this? Because earlier today in Pennsylvania, Biden was asked about this. He left the door open to more strikes if the Houthis kind of don't stop.
Under the bomb damage assessment, if you will, of the individual strikes, that's what they're working on right now. There's been numerous statements today that we're trying to get the BDA, if you will, to figure out exactly how effective they were, and we've made it very clear that if we didn't actually, basically reduce those targets sufficiently, that we might go back in and hit them again. Of course, we do kind of lose the element of surprise now because we've already done one major strike mission over one evening. However, there's a lot to this, the art and science of how you do this, and I'm sure that we can go back and hit them. One thing we're very glad of is that we've basically got all of our planes back. That's the big concern. If we lost a plane, lost pilots, this would have been a very different situation. As far as collateral damage of civilians, we don't know. And that's not clear. However, the places that were hit were away from urban areas. They were in more rural areas, although in some cases they were close enough to urban areas where there probably was a little bit of shock and awe with the population in those areas where they could see the explosions. And I'm not saying that was the intent. The intent was to hit these targets to reduce their capabilities, but a little shock and awe of the population sometimes helps.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask kind of the same question I asked Hal to you. Did the Houthis get the message in the interim? Because Hal was on last night, this very time, this was all breaking. Have we seen any attacks there in the Red Sea against vessels since this? Or is that not really a good indicator just yet? Was it too early to tell, Sal?
Well, Hal mentioned that attack on that ship carrying Russian oil. What's really interesting about that attack, ballistic missile attack, but it was in the Gulf of Aden. They were actually going the opposite direction. And I think that's a good indication that they're concerned about shooting into the Red Sea. The Navy, both U.S. and Royal Navy, have shown that they can really do a good defense against the cruise missiles, against ballistic missiles, and against one-way drones. Saw that on that epic battle on January 9th. So it looks like the Houthi were trying to just demonstrate they're still around by shooting that missile. The big question is how many, how deep their arsenal of these drones and weapons, how effective was the U.S. Navy and the British striking them. The fear again is that what we'll see is everything will quiet down for a few days. Then we'll see a couple of missile attacks come out. And for the shipping companies, the big thing is to get those insurance rates down, show that the Red Sea is navigable without chance of attack. Then we can see a restoration. But right now, everyone's going to be holding and assessing to see whether or not they can continue sailing that region. And the fear is it may expand, actually, may see less ships through before the.
Yeah, I want to put up this tweet here, get you to kind of comment on this. I thought this was interesting, too, because we know all the partners who took place in this. Now we know who didn't. Reuters reporting this. Italy, Spain, and France stood out Friday by not taking part in U.S. and British strikes against the Houthi group in Yemen and not even signing up to a statement put out by 10 countries justifying the attack. How should we interpret this, Sal? What are we to make of this? Is this a one-up? Why wouldn't they be on board? Rome, Paris, and Madrid.
Well, we've seen the French having this separate press conference the other day, and one of the things we've seen is the French Navy, the French frigate that's in place, has been escorting ships of French container liners, CMA, CM. And Italy, probably the same way. We just saw several Italian ships go through the straits. They're really committing themselves to defending vessels around the area. Spain has been down there, but Spain has basically allotted their ship for anti-piracy operations in the Gulf of Aden. We saw it in operations against the ship Juan that was captured by Somalia and still held by the Somalis. So I think you do have some of the NATO nations, European nations, catching. The big thing here is the politics. I'm not seeing those very clearly yet. I think it's very clear. We saw the statement about the attack, who is listed, who's supporting it, and the number of nations that were missing. And I think we're going to see that play out right now. We're seeing China play a subordinate role right now with ships declaring themselves as crews or affiliated with China. And it looks like China's trying to make a move here to get ships under their protection without even having to move their navy in.
Okay, Hal, to you as well. I'm kind of interested as well. I want to put up yet another tweet here because we have this one. I think this is interesting as well, that the Pentagon spokesman, Major General Ryder, says there are no plans for additional U.S. forces to go to the Red Sea region. And Secretary Austin has been actively engaged in directing strikes on Yemen's Houthis, and the initial assessment is that U.S. strikes had good effects. Hal, let's briefly talk about Austin's role here. It seemed like Major General Ryder wanted to emphasize the point that kind of Secretary of Defense Austin was calling the shots here, that he was keenly involved in this decision-making process, still from the hospital, though.
Andrew, it's an interesting that they, in the official tweet, if you will, or the official announcement, that they mentioned Secretary Austin's direct involvement in directing strikes. I just find that kind of interesting. Hey, look, I wouldn't be the first person to say there's a lot of controversy right now in Washington, D.C. and elsewhere over Secretary Austin's hospitalization. All right. And I think the Secretary's office is a little bit defensive as far as some of the accusations, particularly coming from Capitol Hill. So they want to show that the secretary is engaged. Of course, the secretary has been working for days. That was made clear that he is working even though he's in the hospital. I think they wanted to say that. Now, as far as no additional forces going to the Red Sea, that's probably an indication that we feel that we have enough forces in the Red Sea, or I should say in the Red Sea region. They don't actually have to be in the Red Sea. The Gulf of Aden is a perfect example. They don't have to actually be through the Bab el-Mandeb Straits and into the Red Sea area. Certainly, an aircraft carrier task force operates better when it's a little bit off the coast and has room to maneuver and defend itself. So I think we have enough forces there. I would like to point out, though, with the French and particularly the Spanish, you got to remember the French. We have a base in Djibouti, right across the water from Yemen, from Houthi-held Yemen. The French have a large Foreign Legion presence there. Spanish have a presence there. The Italians have had a lot of commercial interests there. So there are other reasons in terms of France, Italy, Spain, looking at these particular strikes where they might want to avoid direct involvement in the strikes themselves.
Okay.
Because of some of their interests in that particular area.
Yeah, Hal, I wanted to ask you as well. We got some questions into Biden today, reporters traveling with him. He says this when asked, do you have a message for Iran? Biden said, I've already delivered the message to Iran. He says this when asked, are you willing to continue bombing the Houthis if the attacks don't stop? Biden said, we will make sure we respond to the Houthis if they continue this outrageous behavior. And then when asked about this, let's put this tweet up. He said, when willing to call the Houthis a terrorist group, Biden said, I think they are. And then Biden said, although it's irrelevant to do so when you consider what the U.S. just did to the Houthis last night here. So is Biden right, and Hal or Sal can answer here, that it's irrelevant that they need this foreign terrorist organization designation because of the kinetic action we took last night? Does it matter? Biden doesn't seem to think so.
Sal, I'll toss that to you first. What do you want to say?
I do think that they need to be labeled terrorists because as what they're doing is terrorizing shipping. No clear other answer than that. As a non-state actor, they are able to interdict and basically threaten and disrupt global supply. And this is having a massive effect on the economy. We're already seeing it happen right now in Europe, where we're seeing freight jump up 2, 3, 4 times. We're going to see it happen in the United States, seeing them prop up there right now. And so they're creating disruption across the entire economic pattern of the world. And that's terrorist. That's terrorizing by the definition. Mm-hmm. And so they were once labeled that. They would feel that. I once again put on them for that. And then this way there could be more sanctions enacted against them. And I do think needs to be more leverage and push it by against the Iranians back who's supplying them, who's getting these weapons to them. That's the big issue. Keep going into this depth of an arsenal of weaponry, shooting it. Very hard to see when this ends.
Yeah. I concur completely with what Sal said. I also think that if you designate them, if they follow through with what the president said today, and they actually turn around and designate them a terrorist group, along with sanctions, there's other things we can do. It gives us freedom of action, if you will, across the international stage to do things. We have enough justification, certainly, to do what we just did and to continue doing what we just did. But designating a terrorist group, an international terrorist group, would make it a little bit easier because I think you're going to see this threat's going to continue for a very long time. The Houthis are not going away. We may get them to stop shooting at ships like they're doing now, but the Houthis are going to be very active in the region. They're a disruptive influence. The Iranians back them. And it's time that we put them in the correct legal status.
Okay, so, is it, though, Hal, too early to tell whether or not some of their capabilities might be degraded after this? We don't really have much as far as, visual elements of the strikes themselves or the damage they wrought. We know possibly 5 or 6 Houthi rebels were killed during all of this. Do you anticipate over the weekend we'll know a little bit more on that front?
Andrew, I do. I think we're going to find out a lot more this weekend. A lot of this, some of this, there are people on the ground. I think there's an AP journalist actually in the Houthi area of Yemen that's been reporting So we might get some actually direct reporting, but there's not a lot of media presence in Yemen, in the Houthi held areas of Yemen, I should say. But we're going to be using things like satellite imagery and a variety of other means that will figure out exactly what's going on. I will say this: it's too early to tell with exactitude as to what the degradation was, but based on the anemic response, firing one missile and then shooting it at the wrong ship.
Yeah.
You know, what we're aiming for was to go for their missiles, their drones, and take out their intelligence capabilities to include their array of coastal radars. And I think that's an indication that maybe we had a high degree of success. You know, when you can only shoot one missile and it goes to the wrong ship and it doesn't make it, that's a clue in my book.
Yeah. Sal, just lastly, too, because you might find this interesting, you're a professor of history, a student of history yourself. I thought it was interesting. People on social media last night were kind of tongue-in-cheek noting the fact that the entire purpose of the creation of the U.S. Navy way back when was to go after pirates who were doing the very same thing, impacting international shipping here. So it's interesting to see old and new alike last night, right?
Yeah, go back to 1794, the Naval Act, which actually created 6 frigates, one of which is still in commission today up at Boston Constitution, was used to help fight state-sponsored piracy, which is basically what you hear with Houthi in the same level. So I do think that in many ways the Navy was executing it. We've talked about before, Andrew, that one of the things really unique is that the U.S. Navy is putting itself not just to defend American ships, but actually trade and its expansion of saw. On January 9th, that big convoy battle that was fought that came through had 4 U.S. ships, crews on board those ships. And they said that this was a heck of a night. There was 3 hours long running missile batteries coming at them. They had weapons off, but the one thing that was unanimous among the crews was their conviction that they were saved by the Navy, and they said very colorful things about very appreciative of the U.S. Navy and the Royal Navy being out.
Yeah, and I guess let's just wrap this up here. Final thoughts from both of you. Hal, we'll start with you. Do we anticipate more strikes, or do we have to kind of assess what happened first?
I think we'll be assessing at the same time. We're going to be on guard for more strikes, and we're going to be watching what they can strike with. There's more arrows in our quiver, so to speak. There's other things that can be done. All right. There's capabilities we have. We have not done a raid, and that's a unique capability we have. And I won't get into details on that, but I will say there are things that we could do that we didn't do. More strikes, different types of weapons. So we'll see what the weekend looks like. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, and Sal, to you, do you think some of these major shipping conglomerates, Maersk, BP, are they breathing a sigh of relief tonight, do you think?
I think they are very glad that it happened. I think they would have loved it sooner, but I do think they're sitting there and waiting. I think the real tell will be when some high-value targets decide to go through this area, and are they going to be targeted? Remember, Maersk had pulled out, then decided to go back in. There was the attack Maersk Hangzhou that really convinced Maersk to pull out a second time, sailing of 4 U.S. ships that were a very high-vis target. I think high-visibility targets through. They're able to get through without problems. Then we'll start seeing some alleviating of.
All right, gentlemen, we appreciate both of your time. Hal and Sal tonight, and we hope you have a good weekend. Thanks so much.
All right. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, Andrew.